Well, thank you very much for this invitation. Um, I have to tell you this because Dean Bernay asked me on the way in whether she told me, I hope you're okay. And I was talking to my mother. I call my mother every day back in Greece. And I told her, I said, I have to give this talk at 6 o'clock. And, it's a last lecture series kind of thing. And she says, oh, this is good news. He says, have you made up your mind to retire and come back and help your country for a change? So she was very serious about it, and it occurred to me that I never included that in my thoughts that I want to share with you. There's this guilt complex. You leave your country, you come to another country, and that country called Greece is suffering as we speak. And sometimes I feel guilty. I feel guilty that I'm having a good time in the United States, being here, and I could have been spending lots of my energy helping my country, and my mother has not given up on me. She says, okay, get done doing whatever it is that you do in the other side of the world, come back and do something for Greece. So I told her, Mom, it is not that I'm not retiring yet. It's just that I tried to explain to her what it is, and she says, okay, let's talk about it another time. But I was thinking about what is it that I wanted to share with you. And I was saying, how much time do I have? Because when you're 57 years old and you have been around the world, you accumulate so much that at the end of the day, unless you take a year to collect your thoughts and put them into a book, you run out of options. What is it that you're going to single out? So what I have here is going to be an incomplete list that I want to entitle is Emotions Are All We've Got. And you see, I have put that in quotes because these actually are not my words. I was watching a movie recently called Youth. That's the title of the movie. It's a recent movie. And there are two friends that are very successful in what they do. One of them is a great composer and also a very good symphony, what do you call it? Symphony conductor. And the other is a very successful director. He makes movies, and they're in one of those very special hotels in Switzerland where very wealthy people go and take care of themselves physically and mentally. And these two friends spend lots of time together. And there's a conversation that takes place where the director tells to the composer, he says, you talk about emotions being overrated. I says, he used a bad word. I say, all of this is bull. Emotions are all we've got. And that is, if I were to share with you one thing, I want you to remember that. Emotions are all we've got as people. So, I come from Greece, and one of the most interesting voices in Greek literature is the voice of Nikos Kazantzakis. Many of you know Zorba the Greek, perhaps. You have heard of Zorba the Greek, or you do not hear Zorba the Greek. You have danced as Zorba the Greek music from the movie Zorba the Greek. But I would say that this is a very important thing that I want you to remember. Life is the luminous interval between beginning and end of a human being. And this captures many of the things I want to share with you today in a way that I hope you will appreciate how exciting, how luminous life is. So just to give you some background, that's where I was born, the island of Kefalonia. As you can see, it has some amazing beaches, some of the best in Mediterranean. That's what I think. I'm biased, of course, but look at this place. When my mother came to Urbana-Champaign with my sister here, my sister was a graduate student, my mother said, why are you guys living in this part of the world? Right? So you can see what her reference point was. But there are some other interesting points about this island. This is the island where Ulysses comes from. Ulysses was one of the important figures in the Trojan War, and of course Odysseus was one of the follow-up of Iliad, was essentially the journey home that Ulysses took. And I call that the initial conditions. You're all engineers, most of you understand what I mean by initial conditions. I hope all of you appreciate how important initial conditions are. Initial conditions are things that we don't have control over as human beings. Just to give you an idea of what I mean by that, there's the boundary conditions. Now, boundary conditions, we have the luxury of setting them up. You know that very well. Along the life, as you pursue your life, you set boundary conditions, and you're confined by things. You're constrained by the certainty of your DNA, and you're also constrained by an uncertainty that we call lack. But we have control over our boundary conditions. Initial conditions, I'm sorry, somebody else takes care of that. And here in my case, this is the reality of my initial conditions. I have no chance by being born in Greece to ever play professional football. And I will tell you, I love football. And I know there are many controversies about football and brain injury, but as far as I'm concerned, I love football. I spend lots of time watching football, and I don't have any support at home because neither my children nor my wife like football. But I love football, and I watch it all the time. The second thing that unfortunately cannot do because of my initial conditions, I can never become President of the United States of America, which I believe is a fascinating job, and I would love to be able to do it, but unfortunately, during my lifetime, there is no option there. So, initial conditions are very important. Now, I come from a family that has been all over the world. What you see here, and I have contributed to some of them, lots of the things that you see on this part in the United States are contributed by me and my sister, but everything else are places where our family has been over the years. We started from, as I told you, we started from Constantinople, Turkey. That's where we started, and then we moved around. As we speak, we have people who live in St. Petersburg, Russia. We have people who spend time in Siam, today's Thailand. We have many people who spend time in Africa, Addis Ababa, Bujumbura, Burundi. I was talking to somebody who told me they were from Congo, and very close in that neighborhood. I had two of my father's brothers spend a good deal of their time. So you can see we have been all over the world, and that's typical of people being born in the island of Cephalonia. I do not know, we call it the curse of Ulysses. That is, you have to leave that place and go around the world and hopefully one day find your way back. So I am on the same journey. As I pointed out to you, all of these places here in the United States that you see, identified as a place where the Candelaris for my family has been, is because of me and my sister. So I believe in that. I think that at the end of the day, all of us, and this now more than ever, we are citizens of the world. We do have our roots, and those are very important. But we are citizens of the world, and the world benefits from the diversity that each one of us, because of our roots, bring to the table. And never lose sight of this, because I will tell you, one of the reasons why I came to the United States is because I thought of the United States as a place where there is so much diversity. And I felt it from far away that this diversity is open for everybody to access and explore. And I have been in this country for 35 years now. And I have come to terms with the reality of how difficult it is to take advantage of diversity. So I want you to keep that in mind. I, from far away, I was looking to the United States as a place where I will take advantage of the fact that so many people from all over the world, from different races, from, you name it, different cultures, want to come and be part of it. I have been here for a long time. And the more time I spend, the more I realize that diversity and taking advantage of it is very hard work. So, you are much younger than me. And you can see that I have the people that I admire a lot. And I started with Alexander the Great. Anytime I bring up Alexander the Great, people get very nervous. Say, Alexander the Great was a conqueror. He destroyed people, he killed people, he destroyed civilizations on his way to conquer the known world. But Alexander the Great was educated by a very important, influential mind, Aristotle. And I want you to pay attention to what he said. He says, I'm indebted to my father for living, but to my teacher for living well. So Alexander the Great, as a disclaimer, why? Because people complain to me when I bring him up as one of my heroes. All he really wanted was to make sure that the Greek civilization and the Eastern civilization come together. And he realized that there are painful experiences when two different civilizations clash. The Iranians, the Persians, and the Greeks fought many wars, and each side blames the other for interfering with the progress of civilization. Alexander the Great was very proactive, as I'm going to explain to you very soon, in making sure that wherever he went, he took advantage of that culture, embraced that culture, and eventually benefited, allowed his country to benefit from that. The other one is Ulysses. My Name is Nobody is the title of a movie, which you do not know about. But the reason why this is important to me is because I have to tell you, people from the island of Cephalonia, and I'm not bragging here, you can go and ask, are considered the smartest people in Greece. And Ulysses survived and was able to help the Greeks defeat or conquer Troy not because he was a great soldier, he was a very persevering individual, but because he used his mind more often than he used his weapons. So this is something I appreciated a lot, and here I have the picture where he actually, here there's a painting of him and his people blinding the Cyclops, and the Cyclops asking, says, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm nobody." And then when the Cyclops was in pain, he was walking around saying, nobody blinded me. Nobody blinded me. So think about it. So it's a point. And then my sister, a true hero. So here's how I started on my trip to the United States, my journey to the United States. In 1981, I became an electrical engineer. You see here myself with my mother in the center, and who had an accident the day before I graduated. She fell down, and you can see that, her head. She's still smiling, but she was in amazing pain at that time. And then my dad, who was very concerned that I wanted to become a lawyer, or I wanted to become a tennis player. And of course, I did want to become a lawyer. I wanted to become a tennis player, but I got to like math so much after I spent several years studying engineering that I realized that was a good thing to do. And then I came to the United States, and I went to Berkeley, and I got my PhD in electrical engineering again. And on the left here, you see my research advisor, Professor K.K. Main, who was a professor in engineering and in Far Eastern Studies. He had this dual appointment, and you cannot imagine how much time he spent in his research conversations with us, telling us about how we can use complex analysis and quantum theory and relativity to explain the meaning of life. So for me, it was very annoying at that time because I really wanted to finish my PhD. But this man spent half of his conversation with his students talking about the importance of complex analysis and relativity to the meaning of life. And then on the right was my graduate advisor responsible for my education, Professor Angelakos, who he kept telling me from day one I should become a professor. And then of course my mother in the center, after I got done with my PhD, says, "Okay, I hope you get married one day." So I love my mother, and so the first thing I did after I got my PhD, I got married. I knew Helen for a long time. Here's Helen. And she and I got married. We went to Greece and we had an amazing wedding. And my best man was as you can see here, you can see him from the side, was actually my graduate advisor, Professor Angelakos. And even after the wedding, the day after the wedding, he told me, he says, "Okay, now give up I was working in industry at that time, it's time to go back to academia." And so I did. And the story is long. I spent many years in academia. A year after we got married, I decided to go back to academia, and Helen came along. So I have 3 children with Helen, and I will tell you, my parents never believed I was going to be a patient person. I was very impatient as a young kid. I used to play lots of tennis, and I was trying to take advantage of tennis to instill some patience in me. But I was very much like John McEnroe, a very difficult person on the court. I could never play doubles. People could not put up with me because I was so critical of every mistake they would make, and I couldn't stand them criticizing me of any mistake I made. So my parents always were hoping that I would become patient one day, and I will tell you, these 3 young people helped me so much with patience. Remember that. I am a teacher, and I spend a good deal of time with people, but when those young people are your children, that's when you learn how to be patient. And then, people who love you. You have to find a way to make sure that as you go down the path of life, you have people who will stand behind you no matter what. So Helen and my sister, Tonya, have been very important. The most difficult thing in my life is learning how to be calm under pressure. So what I show you here is an amazing 2 minutes of football that happened when the Niners defeated Cincinnati Bengals for the Super Bowl. It was the most amazing 2 minutes of football. The Niners were behind, and within 1 minute from the regulation, Montana scored a touchdown. This is when he's passing the ball for the touchdown. The moment before that, everybody was nervous except for Joe Montana. And do you remember an actor called Candy? The funny comedian, you don't remember him. He was watching the game, and you can find it on YouTube. So Joe Montana saw him sitting there, and he told his people, as we were getting ready for this, just, hey, Joe Candy. He's watching the game, and he was so calm, so relaxed. His team was behind, ready to lose the Super Bowl. And there he was talking about Candy in the audience watching the game, in the crowd. That's being calm under pressure. I'm so envious of this man. I wish I were as calm under pressure as he is, but I'm trying. I'm trying very hard. Some other things that I have come to appreciate. The power of being free in the way you think about it. Right? So I mention that because it has such an important influence in the way we go about our lives. This is a statement by a psychologist who has spent a good deal of time writing and talking about how important it is for us to embrace that luxury that the young minds have of thinking about weird things, impossible things. You know, this book, The Cow Jumped Over the Moon, is one of the most favorite books that my children wanted us to read to them. And thinking about the cow jumping over the moon and getting so excited about it, as if it's a no-brainer. The cow wanted to jump over the moon, and the cow jumped over the moon. For me at the time, I didn't take it seriously. And then I come here and I spend a good deal of time talking to students who are so busy thinking about the next homework assignment and you name it, all the things that get in the way and that confine you down the path of structured thinking. Because I will tell you, I tell that to my students, engineers, when engineers make mistakes, people die, right? And that is an unfortunate truth. So we want to make sure, all of us that teach you engineering, that you will not make mistakes. We want you to be disciplined. We want you to make sure that all the fundamentals are very well understood. But sometimes we overdo it. And that freedom of your mind gets interfered with. And so the older I get, the more I try to, and I teach difficult stuff in electrical engineering, lots of physics and mathematics. I try to be as calm as possible about benign mistakes. But when the mistake is serious, then I get really furious. And I tell them, he cannot afford to make this mistake. This mistake is serious. So I have a hard time with this, but please try to remember this. Freedom of your mind is the most important value that you have as a human being. Allow your mind to be free. Take advantage of everything you learn. But at the same time, don't be reluctant to think of the impossible. Because, as you heard me say, nothing is impossible. Really, nothing is impossible. We decide what is possible, and we make it happen. Another thing that I want you to appreciate is you're engineers. I'm an engineer. And I spend a good deal of time worrying about how the things we do and what we can contribute can impact society. The moment you make that statement, if you believe in that statement, if you think that what you do will impact society, you need to appreciate the fact that you are not alone in your task, in your responsibility. You need to know what society needs. You need to hear what people want from you. And it is only then that what you can do with your skills and your talents and your interests becomes really powerful. So take the time. Take the time to engage with whoever is around you. Tell them what you do. Keep it simple, because you never know where the other person comes from. Keep it simple and make it relevant as you engage in this conversation. Make it relevant to the things that they like, the things they are interested in. Right? You expect the same thing from them, but always make that first step. It makes a big difference. So, I mentioned to you I had 3 heroes. So Alexander the Great, So what did he do? He went to another country, so I went to another country. Um, he embraced the culture of Persia. I embraced the culture of the United States. I think I'm trying to. He married into a different culture. I did the same thing. And actually, not only did I do that, Ellen is American, but actually 50% of her DNA is Iranian. So I think I tried to measure up to Alexander the Great because he married 2 Iranian women. I married only 1, he married 2. How about Ulysses? I left home on a conquest. I didn't conquer anything, but I tried to be contributing to many other things along the way, and I had some successes. I had some good successes that I'm very happy about. I suffered some along the way. That's how it is, especially if you try to make yourself more, how should I say, more accessible and more comfortable with a different culture. I learned so much. You cannot imagine the things I have learned, and it never stops. It keeps going. And then, of course, the journey continues. You heard what my mother told me a few hours ago. It's time to go back home, right? Well, I'm not ready to go home because there are many things that I have not done. So, before I conclude, I have a couple of favors to ask. By the way, my third hero, a different story. So, 2 favors. Let me start with how important it is for all of you to run for office. So when I go into the classroom, more often than not, in the first lecture, what I tell my students is something very simple. I said, my success as an instructor in this class is going to be measured by how many of you run for office later in your life. So I'm waiting, because so far, at least to the best of my knowledge, none of the students that have been in my class have run for office. None of them. And I don't understand why. Now, only 3% of the US Congress are scientists or engineers. Hey, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So, please do me a favor. Seriously consider, forget about money. Don't think about money. Think about the impact you can have in such a position of power, decision making, by being part of the Congress of your state, the Congress of your country. I don't care where you do it, whether it is United States, whether it is where you're from, doesn't matter. But make that part of the possibilities in your life. We need that. The way we need diversity in everything else. We need some diversity in the Congress. Don't miss out on that opportunity. Everybody's criticizing Silicon Valley for not being diverse, right? And I understand they have their problems. Nobody's talking about DC, the federal government. I don't understand why. Show me the diversity, and it cannot be only gender diversity. Please understand what I'm talking about. It is not gender or race only. It is ideas, opinions, experiences that you bring forward. So keep that in mind. This is a favor in the class. The second thing I want to ask is, try to not forget that you are human beings. And the best way to engage with people is through the face-to-face, physical conversation. I hate to be using the word physical in front of the word conversation. But in this day and age, and you are much more avid and experienced users of technology than I am, it's so easy for us to isolate ourselves hiding behind our digital devices. So I know you might say, well, he's an old man, 57 years old, he didn't grow up with this technology, he does not know what he's talking about. But I will tell you, this matters a lot. Dr. Tergel has written a book that is very scientific. It's a great book. She is associated with MIT, and the book has some MIT culture into it, but she has really figured that out. It is very important for you, who are going to be the owners of the digital world of tomorrow, to appreciate the value of that conversation. You cannot engage through empathy with anyone over the internet, over a phone. You need to be there to see their expressions, to feel the pain in their expressions. you need to be part of the conversation in a physical way. So please do me a favor. And if you need some guidance and you're thinking about it, this is a great book. But just make it a practice. You know, so I put my iPhone away in order to be able to talk to you. I could have kept it here and take it out who is calling me right now. I'm not doing that. You don't expect me to do that. But please, pay attention to this. It's so important. Especially now, where we see so many problems popping left and right. And I hear people say, why do we have these problems? Part of that is because in our engagement with other people, empathy is not necessarily part of the conversation. All right, so I think these are the things that I want to tell you. I want to share with you, so Nikos Kazantzakis is an amazing writer. You know, he has said things that other people have said in different languages. But this is a conversation that Zorba had with his boss. And this conversation focuses on the things that I want you to see down there. So an old man, very old man, who is not supposed to be doing anything because, as you can see, Zorba is concerned that something will happen to him, and he does not understand the sanity of planting an almond tree. He says, "My son, I carry on as if I should never die." And then Zorba replied, "And I carry on as if I was going to die any minute." And then Zorba is telling the story to his boss, says, "Which of us is right, boss?" So I want to ask you this question. How do you live your life? Do you live your life as if you will never die? Or do you live your life as if you're going to die any minute? I'm asking this question because in my mind, when I read this for the first time, I saw a total equivalence to these two approaches to life. If you believe you are immortal, you do things that a sane person will not do. Right? Think about it. You know, you jump over the moon, you try to jump over the moon, but if you are mortal, if you feel that you are mortal, you will be very cautious. If you live your life as if you're going to die any minute, that means that you are not afraid of assuming risk. Maybe you can help me interpret it in a different way. But I will tell you, I have been trying very hard to live my life either one of these two ways, and I'm very conservative. I find out the older I get, the more conservative I become. And I worry about, I have children, so I have to take care of my children. I am the Dean of Engineering, I have to take care of the College of Engineering. And I'll tell you, the moment I make that association, obstacles come up in my mind that make me much more conservative. Now you might say, well, it's good that the Dean is thinking of taking care of the College of Engineering while we're here as students, because we don't want any funny things to happen. I'm sharing this with you to make you appreciate the fact that the freedom you get by being able, comfortable, with assuming risk is priceless. And I'm trying to get there, and the older I get, the more difficult it is. So, what I would like to suggest, think hard about this. Make yourself comfortable with risk. Don't tell that to your parents. Don't tell them that the Dean of Engineering told us to be comfortable with risk, because who knows what they're going to think of you. Maybe they will take you out of here. But please appreciate what I'm thinking about. Right? Do not, as you set your boundary conditions moving forward, embrace luck. Embrace risk. It's the best thing. I'm 57 years old, I'm still alive. I may be dead tomorrow. It doesn't really matter. But so far, I'm telling you, the older I've gotten, the more difficult it has been for me to embrace risk. So think hard about it. You're young, you're getting your life on the way. Risk is one of your best friends as you move forward. So I will keep it at that, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
So we're gonna open it to questions. If you have any questions, we'll run the mic over. Feel free to just raise your hand. No one?
Thank you, Dean Kinglers. I just wanted to know, without getting into too much details, like what are your thought processes when it comes to, deciding when to go back home?
Yeah. So I do, being the Dean of Engineering at Urbana-Champaign is a gift, right? It's a special thing that you don't want to give up. And I have been here for 3 years. This is my 3rd year. I feel that I need, if things work my way, 10 years to do some of the things I wanted to do. My mother is concerned that 7 years from now she will not be around, and she will not get any credit for me going back to Greece. Not that Greece will benefit from me going back, but at least they will have yet another person to think about the problems they're in. So I hope to be able to go back one day. But right now, this you see how conservative I am? This college is keeping me here. But I feel it's difficult. It's difficult because, don't forget, Greece paid for all my education. I went to K through 12 for free. I went to the university for free. And what do? I take all that knowledge and that training and I bring it to the United States. And I do not know. I don't think it's fair. It makes me feel there's a guilt complex in the back. I did say I believe we're citizens of the world, but there's this emotion that says I'm Greek and I have to go back and do something for that country. And yes, in a way. But I'm from Cephalonia, so there's a very good chance that I'm going to end up there. So, yes.
Can you be more specific about the types of risks that you think we should be taking?
Yeah. All right. So let's assume that this conversation is being taped, and that's the problem. Okay? So I'm not going to tell you what risks I would like you to take, but let me provide you with a hint. If you think of something that is very exciting and yet very difficult, very demanding in terms of time and energy and additional thinking, compared to something that you could go and do very quickly and without too much effort, go down that path. There are things for you to figure out, and at the end of the day, let me tell you another thing that I want you to appreciate. Talented people, and I know this sounds doesn't come out correctly, doesn't come out right, but it is the reality of life. Talented people, at the end of the day, are the ones that labor the most in the world. Right? Everybody expects them to do things. It's up to them to decide whether to do them or not. Right? And risk is one of those, or being comfortable with risk is one of those catalysts that allows people talent to be applied to the things that will benefit the most out of that talent. So let me leave it at that. Okay, two questions here.
Okay. So you mentioned you need more engineers in office, and that's who you all got comfortable with. You have been
You saw my initial conditions got in the way, right? I wanted to be the President of the United States of America. I kind of. Okay, so let me tell you about this. I really wanted to become a lawyer, and didn't work out that way. My dad was very concerned that in Greece lawyers don't make too much money. So my dad, all he cared about, he lived during the Second World War where people were starving. So he figured, my son should be, and my daughter, my sister became an engineer. Because engineering in Greece, when we were growing up, was the #1 profession in terms of opportunities. So my dad said, if they can become engineers, they should become engineers. I love my father. I mean, I love my father and my mother. You know, it's very difficult to break their heart. But, you know, in essence, I have run for office, right? I ran the College of Engineering in Urbana-Champaign. It's a very important office. But public office, the way you think about it, it would have been much easier for me to do it back in Greece than do it in the United States. In the United States, I trained myself as an engineer. I worked as an engineer, as an academic. Would I run for governor of the state of Illinois? Maybe I should, you know, considering the situation. You know, I do not know. Sometimes my accent gets in the way, right? Sometimes my wife tells me that my English is awful. My mother tells me that my Greek is awful. I don't know what language I speak anymore. You know, I do not know. So you see the problems I have. You know, and these things get in my way. I should be thinking that. I should be more comfortable with the challenges and the risk associated with that. I am not that yet. Will I go back to Greece and run for office? As a good chance. There was a question there and then a question over there. John?
Andreas, you brought a lot of your culture, your zest for life and exploration to this country. When you do go back to Greece, what do you think you'll take back with you that's particularly American? Let's say, this man has been away too long, he's too American.
That is very true. So I'll tell you exactly what it is, and that is how comfortable this country is with being innovative about things. Just to make it more specific. So when I came here for graduate school, just to answer your question, John, I found myself in a quantum mechanics class where there were about, 23, 25 students in the class. And there were a few of us, about 10 of us, who were from other parts of the world, from Taiwan, from India, from Europe, the list goes on. And then there were about 15 students who were American students, educated in the United States. And I have to be honest with you, the skills we had from the rest of the world in math, there was no comparison. I'm sorry to say this for those who are American citizens born in the United States, there was no comparison. Right? But all of us from the rest of the world were so careful not to reach out to anyone else for help. You know, if we didn't understand something, we had to go and figure it out ourselves. Whereas those American friends of mine, there's a guy who was doing very well, he was from Colorado, Dylan Williams, very quickly he said, I don't know how to do this. Who does? Does Nanwei know? Does Andreas know? And he would go and find the right people, put together a team, and within an hour, he would have figured out how to solve the problem. And I would be struggling because, I didn't want to go to someone else. I had to do it myself. So that comfort with teaming up with people, bringing different talents to the table, that is so uniquely American. This country knows how to prosper through innovation. And that's exactly what has brought not only Greece, but many countries in Europe down to their knees, is the fact that that innovation factor is something that they do not know how to bring it forward and make it part of their prosperity as nations. So that's what the first thing I will bring back is that. Last year, now that I will say that, I tried to put together a group of people from the United States to go back to Greece pro bono, take a leave of absence from this job, and put together a plan for how to bring external investment to Greece as it was going through this problem. So none of them, all of them my age, very old business, forget it. It's just too risky. So, but I was thinking about this because, we know how to do this. This country is very good. And that independence, that ability to do this is something that countries like Greece need very much. There are questions? Yes.
Take one more question. So this is the last one.
You said that you went through a lot of big struggles and stuff. So I assume that's because you've taken the risk. So when you've taken the risk and you've gone through the struggle, how do you kind of get past all that and keep going?
Yeah, some of the struggles, some of them had to do with making decisions without knowing everything, and some things didn't work out very well. Some of that was very personal things. Life happens, right? Life happens, and away from home sometimes, what I felt is that, you know, those struggles hit you much harder. And that's what I was referring to. That, you know, when you go down the path of assuming risk, you know there are going to be failures and, you know, bad experiences, and you have to be comfortable. And, you know, I will tell you, between us, you never reach out to your parents for advice. Anytime you're about to do something very risky, talk to your parents. Try to figure it out yourselves, because I don't blame them. That's what, if my daughter, who's right here, if my daughter were to ask me, you know, to do something very risky, I will, most likely I will tell her, go and ask somebody else, don't ask me. You know, it's emotions get in the way. Don't forget what I told you about emotions. That's what we are, emotional human beings.
It for today, so thank you so much for coming, Dean Kingler.
Thank you.